Hello and welcome to Weekly MTG. Hopefully you're still joining us from the Extra Life stream that we just came from. We'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment, but first, let's introduce my co-host for the day, Chris Mooney. Thanks for coming.
Yar! Happy Halloween, mateys!
I tried to dress up this morning as well as a dinosaur, but it was too big. It was one of those inflatable ones. It would have been making noise. You wouldn't have been able to hear me. So, kind of normal.
Yeah, I was told that we'd both be in costume, and now I feel like I'm overdressed.
No, you're dressed appropriately. I'm not. But we have a fantastic Halloween show for you all today. We're going to talk Lost Caverns of Ixalan previews, and today we are going to focus on a lot of the special cards that can be found in Lost Caverns of Ixalan. We're going to focus on special guests, set booster exclusives, treasure troves, and some of the Jurassic World cards. Now, before we get to that, if you just saw the stream before this, or are going to hang around for the stream after this, we are doing a lot of employee streams for Extra Life this week. And Extra Life, if you don't know, is a charity that helps out children that Wizards of the Coast has been very involved with for a long time. We've been talking about Extra Life for a while, and there are a number of ways you can help. But quickly, if you want to head to extralife.wizards.com, you can donate directly. You can also purchase Extra Life gear on mtgsecretlair.com. That's where we have the Ponies the Galloping release. So that's cards. Gear is on extralifeshop.com, where we've got t-shirts and that sort of deal if you want to purchase gear and donate to the cause. And then otherwise, you can just stay tuned for the stream after this. They're going to be playing some Commander with Dr. Lupo. And there's also an arena event going on right now that you can partake in going on through November 4th. That's super fun. I played all the decks yesterday and had a really good time. And that one is free as well. So Extra Life, super great cause. And we hope you'll stick around for the stream after this as well.
It's a great cause. And I as the designer of Ponies the Galloping, I am, go out, get those cards. They're super fun and help to support a great charity.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, now let's dive into Lost Caverns of Ixalan. We are going to start with the special guests. Now, for anyone at home who doesn't know what the special guests are, Chris, real quick, what are special guests?
So special guests are reprints, older cards that fit in with in this case, with Lost Caverns of Ixalan. And so we're bringing back some old favorites that are, maybe played in various different older formats, or just have a strong nostalgic connection to the world, or things that we thought would be fun to bring back. You can get them in collector boosters. They are not standard legal, so they're just here to be fun throwbacks to older sets that fit in with the new setting.
Yep, and they're also available on the list in set boosters as well. So, but the cool thing about the special guests is, unlike previous list cards, these have new art.
That's right.
Yeah. So let's start going through these. So they're all going to look familiar except for the art. So our first one is Dargo the Shipwrecker, a Commander favorite here, Chris.
That's right. Dargo, very well known probably to a lot of Commander players, especially on the more competitive end. Dargo has a lot of really fun and powerful things we can do. Of course, with pirates being a big part of Ixalan in the world, we thought that this was a great one to bring back. Helping to bring back characters like Dargo who might not necessarily, actually live on Ixalan or be part of the Ixalan story, but they're so fitting with the setting that we think it's fun to bring them back.
Yeah, gotta have a giant pirate. Next up, we have a returner from previous Ixalan, Pitiless Plunderer. So this one seems like a slam dunk, Chris.
That's right. A card from the original Ixalan. And that was actually the first set that had treasure tokens, which have gone on to become such a big part of various different Magic sets, and especially attached to pirates. We'll see a lot of pirates with treasure in the main set as well as in the Commander deck. So this was just a great, slam dunk, obvious throwback, very heavily played Commander card.
Oh yeah, I have this in one of my decks as well. We do have a question in chat that's a good one here. So this is asking to confirm they won't appear in limited play. That's correct for this set, because we did just announce play boosters. In the future, they will appear in play boosters, and they will be in for limited play. But for this set, they're in set boosters and collector boosters, so they will not be in draft boosters for this set. All right, so those were two of the uncommons we had to show off. We've got some spicy ones next, so let's take a look at Rampaging Ferocidon. So tell us about this card's inclusion.
That's right, Rampaging Ferocidon, one of the most constructed relevant dinosaurs the first time around that we came to Ixalan, has had a long life elsewhere beyond that. So this one, again, just a great nostalgic throwback to the original Ixalan, and since we have dinosaurs in a couple different planes now, but with Ixalan being such a dinosaur-focused setting, the place where we really want to show off the dinosaurs, we really wanted to bring back a couple of well-known, very popular dinosaurs, which we might get to another one in the future.
We might get to another one coming up. But this is also a set about vampires, and this one is somewhat of a classic combo vampire. Mephrodos Vampire with that spooky art right there. Tell us about this inclusion.
That's right. So this one is definitely a way further throwback in terms of older cards. But I think it is an example of special guests can really reach far back into the long history of Magic and bring back some old favorites, with an updated look.
Yeah, and this one's got some combos. If you don't know, there are a few things you can do with this card to wipe a board.
That's right. This it doesn't say combat damage on there.
It does not say combat damage. So yeah, you can find a way to deal damage using +1/+1 counters. There you go. There's your hint. All right, next up. So this one was an interesting inclusion for me because it's a legend who's clearly never been to this plane before, because she's dead.
Rest in peace.
Rest in peace. Miri Weatherlight Duelist.
That's right. So if you've been paying attention to the main set spoilers, you might have seen, and also the story of Ixalan, Lost Caverns of Ixalan, you might have seen that one of the multiple civilizations that the surface dwellers of Ixalan discover when they're traveling into the inner world is the Jaguar folk. And we had a lot of fun with these, the green-white cat faction, and we felt like for special guests, because this is a new faction that we're introducing, we don't have a lot of explicit characters or things that we can bring back, but we thought it would be fun to go back and get some other cats, memorable cats from the history of Magic to bring back. So here is one of the multiple Miri cards. This one from a Commander product that I believe I was on the design team for.
Probably.
But yeah, so just bringing back some cat-themed cards to go along with the cat-themed faction on this new Lost Caverns of Ixalan. And
she's kind of a pirate. They didn't really plunder things, but they were on a boat.
They were on a boat, that is true.
It was a flying boat, but she has a sword. It works. The vibe's right. Now, before I go on to the next one, I do want to pause on, back to the card.
Pause.
Pause. That was unintentional. That set symbol. So I've gotten some questions about the set symbol. Can you talk a little bit about how we're positioning special guests with the set symbol, the numbering, that sort of thing?
Yeah, so this set symbol is not the set symbol for Lost Caverns of Ixalan special guests, but it is in fact the special guest set symbol. And that symbol will continue on for future sets that have special guests. And the numbering scheme will also continue on. So it will not reset with each set, but instead will continue on from, I believe there's 18 in Lost Caverns of Ixalan. So with the next set, it'll start off with 19, and it will continue from there.
Okay, so it's going to be like a subset of cards that is found in each set going forward.
That's right.
Very cool. All right, now we can move on to the next card. Another cat person, Lord Windgrace.
That's right. Speaking of cats, here we definitely have maybe a little bit less piratey of a cat.
A little bit less piratey.
Yeah, Lord Windgrace, very popular commander. The land theme, and especially the sort of lands in your graveyard theme, can combine well with a lot of the different graveyard dissenting mechanics in the set. But really, I think this is just an example of special guests Some of them are going to be throwbacks to directly, old Ixalan cards. We're on Ixalan, so we're throwing back to old Ixalan cards.
Yep.
But some of the special guests will just be, here is an awesome card, we want to bring it back, and that is more kind of thematically connected to the set.
Sure.
So in this case, again, going with what are some fun cats that we can bring back, some famous cats from the history of Magic.
Yep. Well, I think we saw kind of the same thing when we revealed Lord of Atlantis as a special guest, just because there's a heavy merfolk theme.
That's right. There's no Atlantis on Ixalan, but
no
the
Atlantis.
merfolk theme is so fitting. So.
Yep. Speaking of fitting themes, our final special guest that we're revealing today is about as fitting as you can get, because here is Carnage Tyrant.
That's right.
I'd ask you why you included this in the set, but it seems pretty obvious.
I mean, again, one of the most memorable dinosaurs from the first time around. Carnage Tyrant, been much beloved by many players and the bane of many a control player. So again, just something that we thought would be a fun throwback. These cards really allow us, special guests really allow us to bring back these nostalgic cards without, we can reprint cards in the main set, but there's a lot of considerations that have to go into that.
I didn't want to die to this card anymore, so I appreciate you keeping it out of the main set.
That's right, yeah. So being able to bring back these old nostalgic cards without necessarily having to introduce them to standard, it's a really great way of bringing back some old favorites.
Yeah, I wouldn't call this a favorite of mine. I died to this
A favorite
card.
of many, not of Blake.
Not of mine. I died to this card. Maybe more than any other green creature I've ever died to. Maybe. Possibly. All right. So those are the special guests. Really looking forward to those. Again, those are available in set boosters and collector boosters. In the future, they will be available in play boosters. All right. So now let's talk about the set booster exclusive cards, which, speaking of which, this is the last batch of set booster exclusive cards.
That's right. It's the last set with set boosters, so it's the last set of set booster exclusives.
Yep.
They will be missed.
They will be missed. But we're going to go through a bunch of cool ones. We've got a ton of double-face cards here and some non-double-face cards.
That's right.
So we're going to go through these. And you designed these cards, correct?
That's right. So I was the lead for Lost Caverns of Ixalan Commander, which means that these set booster exclusives also fell within my purview. So we've got a lot of cards here that have a special place in my heart. And a few of them are cards that I just personally really wanted to exist. And I was like, here's my shot.
This is my opportunity. All right. So the Chris Mooney special list of set booster exclusives. First, Illustrious Wanderglyph, a 4 and a white for an artifact creature golem. It's got Ascend. We'll talk about that in a second. Other artifact creatures you control get +2/+2 as long as you have the city's blessing. At the beginning of each upkeep, create a 1/1 colorless gnome artifact creature token, and it's a 2/2. You brought back Ascend.
That's right. So speaking of kind of pet cards I wanted to make, so for anyone who knows me, probably knows that I have been the white color pie counselor for a number of years. And one of the things that I like to do is try to find cards in the history of Magic that I think should be white.
Sure.
And this card is a direct reference to, I'm sure, a lot of people who...
It took me a sec, but yeah.
It's Tendershoot Dryad, which was a card that made Saproings in
Yep.
Rivals of Ixalan. That's a card where, making lots of little 1/1s and then at some point boosting your whole team, it just felt like such a perfect white card to me. I was like, I really want to make a white version of this card at some point. And with returning to Ixalan, that being a great place to bring Ascend back, this felt like an excellent time for me to do that. I did submit it, and we played around with the numbers a bit, but eventually we came back to the same spot. We were like, no, these are the right numbers. This is what we think is the most fun. In this case, Illustrious Wanderglyph, gets to play a little bit into the fun gnome theme that Lost Caverns of Ixalan has. Additionally, Illustrious Wanderglyph, it gives that boost to all artifact creatures, not just gnomes. So there's going to be a bit of an additional application beyond just a gnome-themed deck or playing this card on its own. But I love bringing back old mechanics. I think that Commander decks and then also these set booster exclusive cards are great places for us to bring back mechanics that might not have enough space for a full set, but are something that players, they're fun, that players will enjoy seeing them again. There's a lot of nostalgia. And so getting to bring them back on just a couple of cards, it's a really fun opportunity.
Absolutely. All right, next up we have Altar of the Wretched and Wretched Bone Mass. So Altar of the Wretched is an artifact for 2 and a black. When Altar of the Wretched enters the battlefield, you may sacrifice a non-token creature. If you do, draw X cards, then mill X cards, where X is the creature's power. Then you can craft with 1 or more creatures for 2 and black, and 2 black, return Altar of the Wretched from your graveyard to your hand. Then if you do craft with that Altar of the Wretched, you get the Wretched Bone Mass, a star skeleton horror, whose power and toughness are each equal to the total power of the exiled cards used to craft it, hence the 1 or more creatures. Wretched Bone Mass has flying as long as an exiled card used to craft it has flying. The same is true for that whole list of abilities right below there. All right, tell us about the creation of this card.
Yeah, it's a lot to take in. This one is definitely a wordy one.
It is.
That listing out all the keywords takes a lot of space. But essentially, so something like you said, we're about to see a lot of double-faced cards here when we're looking at these set booster exclusives. And the reason for that is because Commander decks, just because of printing technology, we can't really put double-faced cards into our Commander decks.
Yeah.
So what that means is that typically when we're designing new cards, we aren't able to make new double-faced cards. Which
Specifically
is
for Commander, yeah.
For Commander, exactly. Yeah. But since these are set booster exclusives and they're being printed alongside everything else, we actually had the opportunity here to make some double-faced cards. And in particular, one of the mechanics in the set, crafting, was something that we really wanted to explore and make a couple more cards for, and we just didn't have the opportunity to do so. So in this case, Altar of the Wretched is a card where you want to have a bunch of stuff in your graveyard and then craft it all together into one big amalgamation.
Yep.
We thought that using these set booster cards to explore the different ways that you can use the crafted cards in different means. You know, for smoothness of gameplay and simplicity, a lot of cards in the main set are, craft with an artifact and you get the backside. But for a lot of these set booster cards, we wanted to say, what if you encourage you to craft with different things and really build your deck around fulfilling the crafting requirements. So in this case, you want to have a bunch of cool creatures that you can smash together into your Wretched Bone Mass. And if it dies, you can pay to bring it back and hopefully try to make a second Wretched Bone Mass.
All right, very cool. All right, next up, another double-faced card. We've got Ore-Rich Stalactite and Cosmium Catalyst. So it's another kind of 2-mana rock. So 1 and a red. Tap to add a red, spend this mana only to cast an instant or sorcery spell. And then you can craft with 4 or more red, instant, and or sorcery cards, and 3 red. And then the backside, that Cosmium Catalyst there, for 1 and a red, choose an exiled card used to craft Cosmium Catalyst at random. You may cast that card without paying its mana cost. Tell us about this card.
So this was a card that we were really excited to we started with that idea of what if you crafted with a bunch of instants and sorceries, which isn't something that you'll see a lot of in the main set.
Yep.
And then you get to cast them for free on the backside. But we wanted to make sure that there was a sufficiently red element to it. We thought that this idea of having to put a bunch of spells in it and then getting them out at random added a fun excitement that made it you really had to build your deck and fill your graveyard in a certain way to get the most out of it, to make sure that each of your random flips was hitting something that was powerful and that was useful to you. Additionally, just on the front side, we were excited. 2 mana rocks can be very powerful. So we wanted to make sure that this entire card was really encouraging you to put this in a very heavily spell-based red deck.
Yeah, it's a 2-mana rock, but only for certain things, and it's useful if you build your deck that way, but not so much if you're trying to cast creatures.
That's right. So as a Spellslinger player myself, I'm very excited to put this in some of my red spell-based decks, get a lot of value out of the mana, and then in the late game start slinging spells for free and seeing what happens.
Absolutely. All right, we're going to take a momentary break from double-faced cards to take a look at Contest of Claws. So this is 1 and a green for a sorcery. Target creature you control deals damage equal to its power to another target creature. So it's a bite, as you will. If excess damage was dealt this way, discover X, where X is that excess damage. Interesting twist on this sort of effect.
That's right. Another thing that we like to do with the Commander cards is find interesting ways of reusing main set mechanics. Things that weren't being done by the main set. And we thought that this was a fun way, Discover, which is our, kind of new version of Cascade. One of the things that it does is it allows you to cascade through all sorts of different means, not just by casting the spell.
Yeah.
And so in this case, saying like, oh, I want to have a big creature, I want to bite something, and then I'll get an even free bonus thing out of it, we thought was just a really fun way of using the mechanic and sort of encouraging you to play this kind of like green interactive spell in your large creature decks.
Yeah. Well, and I love that there's a couple things I love about this card. One is that in the past, if you were playing Cascade, this is the kind of card you wouldn't necessarily want in your deck because of the way Cascade worked. But Discover works a little bit differently.
That's right. Because you don't have to cast the spell, you can just decide to put this card in your hand and save it for a better opportune moment later on in the game.
Yeah. And the other thing I like is that it keys on the excess damage. So most of the time you want to kill, the biggest thing, the scariest thing. But with this one, you might want to kill the thing that gives you the best Discover number, whatever that might be.
That's right. I mean, using your 6-power creature to kill their 5 toughness creature and then getting to cascade into your soul ring, that's a pretty nice, pretty nice sequence of events. So even for lower values of X, you're still going to get a lot of usefulness out of this.
Absolutely. All right, back to some double face cards. Well, at least one. Well, anyway, one, and then we'll skip, and then we'll go to double face cards. And there's double face cards. We'll just keep going. Next up, we have Tetsin, Gnome Champion. This is a blue, red, and a white for a 2/2 legendary artifact creature gnome, for those of you wanting to build a Gnome Commander deck. Whenever Tetsin or another double-faced artifact enters the battlefield under your control, mill 3 cards. You may put an artifact card from among them into your hand, and then you can craft with 6 artifacts and 4. And when you do, it flips into the Golden Gear Colossus, who is a 6/6 with Vigilance and Trample. And whenever the Golden Gear Colossus enters the battlefield or attacks, transform up to 1 other target double-faced artifact you control. Create 2 1/1 colorless gnome artifact creature tokens. There's a little treat at the end there.
Yep.
Yeah. All right, tell us about this really cool card.
So Tetsin is one of 2 commanders that we made. And with the Set Booster exclusive, it allows us to make commanders for strategies that might not have enough support or be, for us, we'll have difficulty making a precon. As we said, kind of the double-faced thing, we can't make double-faced pre-constructed commander decks. So we wanted to make a commander in these Set Booster cards that would allow people to really go all in on double-faced artifacts. This is something that features heavily in Lost Caverns of Ixalan, but also in many other previous Magic sets that have double-faced cards. So we wanted this card to basically, reward you for playing lots of double-faced artifacts. The backside allows you to just flip any double-faced artifact you have, which can be very powerful since a lot of double-faced artifacts have a kind of challenging quest
Transformers
in order to be able to transform them.
Yeah.
But also on top of that, we knew that there were going to be a lot of people who loved the gnomes. There's these awesome gnome designs in Lost Caverns of Ixalan that really incorporated, the Oltec sort of architecture and shape language, which is something that we wanted to make sure that people who loved those little guys were going to actually be able to build a deck with one of them in the command zone. So that's also, Tetsin is here to hopefully satisfy them. You take all your gnomes, you take all your crafting cards, throw them together, and have a pretty fun deck.
Yeah. All right, next up, we have Eye of Oertak. Oh, wait, nope, I skipped one. Nope. What's his name again?
Javier.
Javier
Saul.
Infested Captain. There we go. I got ahead of myself on the sheet.
Yarr.
But I don't want to get ahead of this card because it says populate and proliferate. I'm going to read the whole thing, but that's kind of the TLDR. It populates and it proliferates. Black, green, blue for a legendary creature. Human fungus pirate. 3/3. Remove a counter from another permanent you control. Populate. Activate only as a sorcery. Sacrifice another creature. Proliferate. Activate only as a sorcery. Yeah, this card seems kind of wild besides just being a fungus pirate.
It definitely is. So Javier Saul was a character that, is from the stories, from the world building, and they were like, we would really love for you to use this character. For a while, Javier Saul was actually the leader of the Pirates Commander deck. But at some point we decided, the flavor just doesn't seem right. We want Javier to really be the sort of fungus pirate, and so that's where Admiral Brass took over the pirate deck, and we had a much, a triumphant return of Admiral Brass to lead the Pirates precon. So Javier Sal then got his own card in the set boosters, and this card was a little bit inspired by, back in the old days, we had the original fungus, the Thalids, who built up spore counters over time and then made sapling tokens.
Yeah.
And that sort of led us to, like, could we make a card that used the two very fun words to say, populate and proliferate, together? So that's what inspired Javier's design. Obviously, there are many, many cards in Magic that make tokens and have counters on them, or do both. And so Javier Sal has just tons and tons of interesting things that you can do with him, building around him in Commander. But if you do want to play with those old Thalids, he'll also be pretty good at helping them out as well.
Definitely. All right. Now we're on to Eye of Ohertok. / Apex Observatory. So this is a 3-mana artifact. Tap, add 1 mana of any color, and then craft with 2 cards that share a card type, and 6 mana. And then it flips into Apex Observatory when you craft it. Apex Observatory enters the battlefield tapped. As it enters, choose a card type shared among 2 exiled cards used to craft it. And then tap. The next spell you cast this turn of the chosen type can be cast without paying its mana cost. There's those key words, without paying its mana cost.
That's right. It's very exciting. This is a card, so we were definitely going after, let's make some fun crafting cards that care about the cards that you use to craft them. So this card, you want to put it in sort of a deck that has a lot of matching card types, an artifact-themed deck, an enchantment-themed deck, or even just an all-creatures deck. And then by crafting with 2 of those matching cards out of your graveyard, you can now start casting a bunch of spells from your hand for free. It's pretty expensive to craft, so you'll definitely want to be able to have a lot of expensive things to put into play with it in order to reap the benefits of the costs. But of course, a 3-mana, mono rock, not too shabby either. So if you play it early, it'll hold its own for a while, but really you're looking for that juicy payoff at the end with the crafting.
Absolutely. All right, and our final set booster exclusive card forever. Paleontologist's Pickaxe and Dinosaur Headdress. So for 2 mana, you get an artifact equipment. Whenever equipped creature attacks, draw a card, then discard a card. Great, helps with crafting. Equip 1. And then craft with 1 or more creatures and 5 mana to turn it into a Dinosaur Headdress. When Dinosaur Headdress enters the battlefield, attach it to target creature you control. As Dinosaur Headdress becomes attached to a creature, choose an exiled creature card used to craft Dinosaur Headdress. Equipped creature is a copy of the last chosen card. And equip 2. All right, tell us about this wild card.
Yeah, so again, this card was, what's a fun thing to do with crafting? Oh, what if you could become a copy of the thing that you crafted with? So we designed this around, the front half being an equipment that allowed you to kind of fill your graveyard, maybe with some powerful creatures that you want to copy. And then you get to craft an equipment that essentially allows you to turn any of your creatures into those. Something that was fun about this card is that for a long time, it just crafted with 1 creature, and you could become a copy of that one. But actually, when we were templating the card, when we were making sure that it worked within the rules, it was like, hey, this would actually be easier to write and more fun if we allowed you to craft with multiple creatures. So now you can put multiple creatures in the mask, and as you move it around, you can pick to become copies of different things.
Very cool.
So yeah, this is a fun one to find interesting combinations of things that you can become copies of, and just generally a fun payoff for filling your graveyard.
Yeah. I am seeing a couple questions in chat just about what these cards are, where they're from. The set booster exclusives, again, come in set boosters. They can also be found in collector boosters in that extended frame that we saw. And they are Eternal Legal. So Commander Legal is what they're primarily designed for, but you could, if you're going wild, play them in Legacy or Vintage, I guess. But yeah, and they'll also be the last set booster exclusives that we do.
That's right. They were fun to make, and I hope that you all enjoy, especially our one opportunity to make some extra double-faced cards.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so we've got 2 more categories left to go before the end. We are going to do a Q&A after we get through the Jurassic World cards. So if you have questions in chat, I've been watching and answering some as we go along, but if you have specific questions about the design of any of these cards for Chris, about Lost Caverns of Ixalan, or anything related, feel free to tag @Magic in chat, and we'll get to whatever questions we can answer here. All right, next up are the treasure troves. So these are box toppers, and we have 3 to show you here. We have Everflowing Chalice, a personal favorite of mine, Strionic Resonator, a personal favorite of a lot of people, and Worn Power Stone, a pretty highly used mana rock for Commander. So Chris, tell us a little bit about these cards' place in the game.
Yeah, so the treasure trove was really thought of as, Ixalan, Lost Caverns of Ixalan, the journey of the various different factions and groups from the surface through to the center of the world. Many of them are on their journey to discover the lost civilizations of their ancestors, but some of them, they're there for treasure. Yeah. and the treasure trove really represents a couple of powerful, exciting, nostalgic artifacts from Magic's history that you can now get in these beautiful new Ixalan-themed art.
Yep. Yeah, and I love that, if you have this card and another art, you can play it. It does the same thing, but if you're a fan of this art style, if you're a fan of the world of Ixalan, like these are very flavorful ways to kind of spice up your Commander deck. All right, and again, these are box toppers, so you can find these on the top of any box. You buy a box, you get one of these. All right, and our final category are Jurassic World cards. So we have 5 of these to show off. First up, we have Cresting Mosasaurus. 6 blue for a creature dinosaur. It has Emerge, 6 and a blue. When Cresting Mosasaurus enters the battlefield, if you cast it, return each non-dinosaur creature to its owner's hand, and it is a 4/8. So we see Emerge coming back here.
That's right. And if you've been, paying attention to the various Jurassic World previews, you've seen that this is a case where we really loved bringing back old mechanics that we, fit within the flavor of the world that allowed us to, again, give life to some older mechanics that might not come back in a major way in Magic's future, but still have a couple of, fun, interesting designs that we can make with them, and especially designs that are very flavorful. So in this case, with the Mosasaurus emerging from the water, and also the fact that it eats people.
Yep.
Emerge was just a fun, flavorful way to represent this and to make a new card with an old mechanic.
Absolutely. All right, next up we have Spitting Dilophosaurus. For 2 and a black, you get a creature dinosaur, of course. It's a 3/2. Whenever Spitting Dilophosaurus enters the battlefield or attacks, put a -1/-1 counter on up to 1 target creature. And creatures your opponents control with -1/-1 counters on them can't block. Flavor text is killer as well. All right, next up we have a card called Savage Order. For 2, a green and a green, we get a sorcery. As an additional cost to cast this spell, sacrifice a creature with power 4 or greater, not a line we see very often. Search your library for a dinosaur creature card, put it into the battlefield, then shuffle. It gains indestructible until your next turn. Savage Order play on Natural Order.
That's right. And this is an example of, when we tighten the bands a little bit, when we say, oh, you can only get dinosaurs, it means that we can also, give it a little bit of an extra boost as well.
A little powerful, yeah. Natural Order is one of the most powerful cards ever printed, and this one is a play on that. All right, next up we have a big one, Grim Gigantosaurus. For 5, a black and a green creature dinosaur. It's a 10/10. It's got Monstrosity 10 for 10, a black and a green. This ability costs 1 less to activate for each creature with power 4 or greater your opponent's control. When Grim Gigantosaur becomes monstrous, destroy all artifacts and all creatures other than Grim Gigantosaurus. So it becomes a 20/20 and blows up a lot of stuff. So yeah, this is a big creature here, Chris.
That's right. And again, Monstrosity, a very fun, flavorful old Magic mechanic that it's awesome to bring back on these individual cards.
And finally, another part of the coolness of the Jurassic World cards is bringing some of these characters to life. So here we have Henry Wu, InGen Geneticist, black, green, and a blue for a 1/4 legendary creature, human scientist. Henry Wu, InGen Geneticist, and other human creatures you control have Exploit, which is an old ability that lets you sacrifice a creature when it enters the battlefield. Whenever a creature you control exploits a non-human creature, draw a card. If the exploited creature had power 3 or greater, create a treasure token. The flavor on this one seems on point.
Yeah, it's very on the nose. You know, InGen, very exploitative of the dinosaurs, and in this case, Henry Wu allows you to also exploit dinosaurs if that's what you're into.
If that's what you're into. All right, that covers all of the preview cards we had. So if you have any questions, go ahead and put them in chat. It helps to tag at Magic, and we will get to as many as we can. So I saw a couple here. I'm going to screen them up. Let's see. When are we going to get a Pioneer legal Merfolk Lord? None spoiled yet, but we need one to make Merfolk a thing in Pioneer. You know, we've still got previews left for this set, so I'm not going to say anything specifically about that. But, you know, there's a pretty good Merfolk Lord that is currently in Standard that might get its due. I forget what it's called. The 1/1 with Flash that gives all Merfolk +1/+1 and lets you sacrifice a Merfolk to force spike something. I forget what it's called. That one's pretty good. All right, let's see. All right, let's see. Let's see if we can answer this one. Was the set design Did the set design consider the usage of cards to create diversity in Eternal formats? For example, the new Dreadbore was definitely needed for Rakdos mid-range to trim its bad matchups. I guess you can talk, you know, I know you weren't on that specifically, but maybe you can talk a little bit about the balance between designing for Standard versus Eternal formats, what goes into the card sets?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of designing for Eternal formats, we definitely think about it and spend time on it. And certainly when there are cards, such as that card that's being referenced, it has, you know, if you've descended, which is obviously a mechanic that combines very well with fetch lands. So when we're making stuff like that, we're definitely clearly aware of you know, what we are adding to. That being said, we make our sets so far in advance. And a lot of things can change between when we make the sets and when they come out. So especially for Eternal formats, that's where a lot of just, you know, our general paying attention to the format and the general health of it becomes more important. But in terms of this, you know, I always talk about how it's pretty crazy how, like, currently I'm leading a set, and that set comes out in 2025.
So, ways away.
Yeah, so there's a lot of time in between now and then, so we're not always going to be perfectly aware of the state of formats when we're making the sets for them, but we do think about it, especially when it comes to mechanics that we know combine well with things that are relevant in those formats.
Absolutely. Let's see. Is there an extended art version of Tetsun Gnome Champion? I don't believe we saw one when it was on screen. There is.
Yes, all the set booster exclusive cards have extended art. Yeah, there we go. Yeah.
Extended Tetsun.
Yep, he's sweet.
Did we get the blue set booster exclusive card, or has that been previewed by another outlet already? I think we showed off all the set booster exclusive cards. Yes, sadly, and I apologize to all of my blue player friends out there. There is not a blue set booster exclusive card. For a while, the Paleontologist Pickaxe was the blue one. But over time, we said, hey, we think this can actually be colorless. We think colorless in Color Pie is allowed to do this effect. And we thought it was just a more fun card to have be colorless so that more people could put it in their decks. So I'm sorry to the blue players. We did have a blue one for a while, but eventually it became a colorless card. So you can still play it. You can still put it in all the same decks, but so can other people. So. That's fair enough. I mean, blue's the best color. We get all the good stuff. So that's right. You know, like I'm just doing my part to help bring blue down a couple notches. All right. All right. Are the special guest cards replacing the list cards? Yes, the special guest cards are part of the list. And so when you get a list card in your set booster, it can be one of those.
That's right. And to be clear, I think for both, the list for Lost Caverns of Ixalan and for the list moving forward, right? They're part of the list. They don't fully replace the list. So there'll still be other list cards. The reason why they're special though is because unlike the list cards, all of the special guests have new art. So that's what separates them from the normal list cards, that they're getting a facelift to kind of, bring them up to, modern, Magic art, or to fit in with the setting better.
Yeah. Yeah, and I do encourage you, if you have questions about the list going forward and all of that sort of stuff, you can read Mark Rosewater's article on play boosters and what's happening with those. We also did some follow-ups. We did a show on WeeklyMTG where we talked a little bit about the upgrades to the list, and there was a Discord activation that we published all the questions and answers to on Daily MTG as well. So look for those if you have more questions about what the list will look like in the future. Does the rarity indicator on the special guests matter? Yes. Could you pass along the suggestion to reveal more commons earlier during preview season? It's been a rough time for us draft players. Also, Chris, love your boots.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I just happen to own these boots, but they fit the costume perfectly. So.
Also, the suggestion has been passed on because it's my team that runs previews. So. You got the right place.
I'm also a draft player, and I also like seeing
That's fair.
The cards.
Let's see. Is this all of the Jurassic World cards, or are there more? I think this is the last of them, but I would have to check the actual preview plan, which I do not have in front of me. But I believe this is the rest of them. Let's see. Will rare or uncommon caves be in the cave slot in draft and set boosters?
That's a good question. I believe they are, but I would have to double check.
Yeah, we'd have to double check. If you have specific questions that we aren't able to answer about the makeup of packs, there is an article called Collecting Lost Caverns of Ixalan that will tell you kind of what's in each pack, and it'll talk a lot about the slots. So if we're not able to answer a question about where something is or the makeup of a pack, you can definitely look up that article and find the answer specifically. Let's see. I know it's often requested, but I'm curious. Was a Bant Merfolk considered for the set during creation? I figured set boosters would be the best possible place for them. I'll +1 that question, because I have a Merfolk deck, and my commander is Chulane. So,
I mean, I can't comment on Chulane, but in terms of the Bant Merfolk, so it is something that we talked about. We talked about it when building the Merfolk Commander Precon. We talked about it with the set boosters. Ultimately, we just determined that taking a look at... So one of the things with Commander Precons that you have to keep in mind is that when we're building them, we sort of have to also think about what cards are going to go into the Precon as well.
Yeah.
And what are the themes going to be.
Yep.
One of the things that we found was that when looking at Bant Merfolk, that it was challenging for us to get the deck to really connect with the themes of Ixalan. The Merfolk in Lost Caverns are very explore themed,
yeah.
So they want to have that +1/+1 counters theme. A lot of the white Merfolk from Old Lorwyn have a totally different theme that they're working with. So we felt like in order to really express this set, and in order to really express the Merfolk that are here, we wanted to focus on blue and green. We spent a lot of time thinking about making a Bant Merfolk, and it's certainly something that we said, hey, this is something that people will want. Mm-hmm. It's something that we should make a note of, and it's something that we should keep an eye out for our next opportunity to make one. So people who want the Bant Merfolk legend, we definitely are hearing you, and I've definitely passed that along to future sets that maybe have the opportunity to make a Bant Merfolk as well. It's definitely not something that we're overlooking, but ultimately from a design standpoint, we just felt like this was not the place to do it.
Fair enough. I'm going to give you a little bit of side-eye, but I'll stay on them, Harlequin. I got it. I got you. I'm in the same boat. All right, let's see. Next up, hey, happy Halloween to you too. Let's see. Will this weekly MTG VOD be on YouTube? Yes, it will. Let's see. Okay, how do you like the gods flipping to lands concept compared to the other deities from other sets? So for those who don't know, we've done gods before, and they all have some form of immortality, we'll call it, of ways for them not to die. We saw the Amonkhet ones go like third from your top of your library. These ones transform into lands that when you meet a condition can transform back. So talk a little bit about the gods and their immortality here.
Yeah, so I think when designing God cards, we do, well, one thing I often say is that, gods exist on a spectrum in Magic the Gathering. You have the Theros gods, which are maybe some of the most ethereal, they're not even creatures a lot of the time. Two, on the other side of the spectrum are the Kaldheim gods, who are really just creatures. And because that's the way that in that mythology, gods work very differently from how they work in Greek mythology. So in general, we have always tried to figure out how can we best place the god abilities to match with the setting that we're creating, and then also to mix it up a while. I think that people, given that the gods tend to have some way of being resilient, of being hard to remove or hard to interact with in various ways, that it could be a little bit frustrating or a little bit repetitive if all of them use exactly the same method. So the Ixalan god came about because we felt like we wanted to find a fun way to make them more resilient, to make them have that kind of immortality feeling. But to tie it in with the mechanics that we were using in the set, and one of the mechanics of Ixalan is, transforming cards with lands on the back. So we thought that this was just a great way of it capturing their, sort of divinity, the fact that they always come back, but also getting to put some awesome art of what their temple would look like. The monuments that the people have built to them, and to just find a new, different way of representing godhood. So. In general, I personally really like it. I think it's a cool, interesting, different take on things. Also, sometimes your god dies, you get a land, and then you get to play your second copy, and now you just get to have another god, but also have a land in play. So there's, I think, a lot of fun and interesting stuff going on. But I also think that it's something that I'm not sure if we'll return to, or if next time we'll just find another different way of having the gods feel godly. So I think that having that variety among the god cards, even some gods that we've seen multiple times have had different kind of forms of immortality. It's certainly a lot of what Magic is all about, is finding new and different and exciting ways of representing these themes that we return to.
Yep. All right. Let's see. Best Bant Merfolk commander is Derevi. It depends. Do you want your glimpse of nature in the command zone, or do you want your Merfolk Regery in the command zone? Different flavors there, but it can go back a little. There's an argument to be had. Does Zakama get a new card in the precon or the main set? So we're not going to answer that because previews are still ongoing. But I will say that if you're interested in the precons, those are going up tomorrow. So there are several outlets that are going to reveal full decks.
That's awesome. I didn't know, and I got to get ready because I'll probably be sharing a lot of stories about the creation of those cards online.
Absolutely. If people want to hear those stories, how can they follow you?
You can follow me. I'm primarily on Twitter at Chris K. Mooney, and that's where I post a lot of my stories.
Yeah, so tomorrow when the Commander decks go up, Chris will be chatting about it.
That's right. They were very fun to make, especially if you are, fans coming in from the old Ixalan, if you have nostalgia for those old creature types. All 4 creature types have their own commander deck here, and there's a lot of fun and exciting cards, new and old.
Yeah. All right, let's see. Let's see, why not Sultai Merfolk Commander then? Black has Explore cards too. I think you kind of talked about that in the philosophy of it. Not a question, but a note. I'm still praying for a skeleton support legend. We'll just have to see.
Gavin did put out a couple of hints at some cards. In fact, I think 1 or 2 we saw today when we looked at the Sepulture cards. So in Gavin's hints, I will at least tell you that there is a card named Skeleton Crew. So
there you go.
There's some skeleton love coming. In fact, I think also there's a main set skeleton support card that we've spoiled today. So
I just got that wave of nostalgia because one of my first favorite cards was Skeleton Ship way back in the day. But Okay, let's see. So I guess we're asking about commanders today. What about another Mardu vampire commander, like Queen Meralda, for example?
Yeah, so we spent a lot of time thinking about what colors the commander decks should be. There is often a lot of pressure towards having the most colors possible. But when it comes to designing commanders, there also is a limitation on having lots of colors, because when we are designing them, we then have to compare them directly to other options of the same color identity. So for example, Clavileño, who is the leader of the white-black commander deck that we made, like, we got to put more power and more, specific kind of deck building direction into him because he was only 2 colors, which limits your deck building.
Yeah.
Whereas if we had made a 3-color commander, we really would have had to ratchet the power down, or at least pay a lot more attention to how powerful the card was, because having access to the 3rd color adds so much power and so much flexibility. On top of that, when you have something like a very popular and very powerful commander in those color options, in this case being Edgar Markov.
Yep.
That is a very difficult card to compete with. And oftentimes, if we are designing cards that have exactly the same color identity, it can be very challenging to, how do we make a card that is strong in a different way from this card, but has exactly the same color identity, exactly the same theme? So oftentimes, when we are thinking long-term for Magic, we're not planning to stop making commanders. We're planning to make commanders for hopefully a very long time. And so what that means is that every opportunity we have to make a commander that has the most possible colors and be the strongest, sometimes we say, like, hey, one day we'll come back to this, one day we'll do it, but let's take this opportunity to do something else. And in the case of Ixalan, the merfolk and the vampires being so specifically tied into those 2 color pairs, we felt like, let's represent how these factions are on Ixalan, and there will be many other opportunities for us to make more multicolored commanders for these options. The same way that when we went to Innistrad, we did a black-red commander deck instead of a white-black-red commander deck. We could have made a 3-color one there, but vampires on Ixalan are much more focused on black and red, and we felt like there was an opportunity there to try and make a compelling 2-color commander instead of a 3-color one.
Okay. If you want to compete with Tulane for a merfolk commander, make it tap or untap things. Just give it the Mirror Regery ability, and then also the card draw ability. You can make it cost 12. I don't care.
People out there, you can call me a hater. I don't think that I personally am trying to compete with Tulane.
Just in the merfolk space.
Some cards that are maybe more interesting is what I'll say.
All right. Okay, so there are a lot of questions about, like, where is this character? Are we going to get a new version of this? And we're not going to spoil the rest of previews, because the answer might be yes, the answer might be no.
There's a lot of main set left.
There's a lot of main set left. There's the commander decks left, which like to do new versions of beloved characters. But maybe you can talk a little bit about the philosophy of when to bring back old characters and when to give them new versions, when to give them old versions.
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's very much a collaboration between my team, which is the card design team, and the creative team, who's in charge of weaving together the art, the names, the flavor text, and the story of Magic. So a lot of the times, it is a big collaboration. It's not really one team or the other deciding everything that goes down, but it's more like the creative team will come in with a list of characters that they're interested in us representing. Sometimes we'll come in saying, oh, this card was really memorable. We want to do that character again. Sometimes we'll just make a card, and then the creative team will say, oh, we have a character that would fit perfectly with the design that you made, so we're going to put that character, on this card. So it's really big collaboration, and because of that, it makes it difficult to answer, if you want to see characters, expressing your love for those characters, telling people, at Wizards that you want to see those characters, that's the best way, because honestly, it is such a collaborative element. There isn't one specific person or specific group or specific team that's like, all right, here's all the characters we're definitely going to do. What that means, though, is that sometimes, things get lost in the shuffle. Maybe there's a character that, we ended up not making a card for just because it happened to get squeezed out due to space, or because, it just we didn't, there's a lot more fans of this character than maybe we thought at first. So expressing your love for the characters is something that really helps us determine who to bring back. But also, with things like, Modern Horizons type sets, and with just the general state of the multiverse right now where characters can travel through omen paths and show up on other planes. There's a lot more opportunities to bring back characters than maybe there were in the past. So if you want to see characters, definitely just expressing us and telling us how much you love them or who you want to see again, then that might help to inspire us to make a new card of that character.
All right, last question I think that we're going to have time for. Was the craft mechanic a bottom-up or top-down design? I would have thought it would also fit well on a plane like Kaladesh.
Crafting was definitely a top-down design. We started on this underground adventure journey, like what makes sense, what's something that fits in with that genre. And we felt like, crafting all of your tools or finding a cool discovery that you have to rebuild, that felt very fitting. And then additionally, as the creative team, introduced the Oltec, who are the long-lost civilization that lives within the center of Ixalan. They also had a very sort of advanced technology theme to them, where the surface dwellers of Ixalan, their technology is a little bit, it's behind ours. A real-world Earth past. The Oltec sort of have continued to evolve and create these like amazing feats of technology, and we thought that was also a great representation of crafting as well, of showing off that sort of ability to have this advanced technology within the center of the Earth. So it was definitely inspired by flavor first, and we tried to figure out what would best represent putting multiple things together to create something new.
All right. Well, thank you, Chris, for taking us on this exploration of Lost Caverns of Ixalan previews. Thank you for joining us and asking a bunch of great questions, hanging out for an hour. Next up, we have more content. Usually, WeeklyMTG just kind of throws to a blank screen, but the Extra Life employee streams continue with an employee named Nick, who's going to be playing, I believe, Commander with Dr. Lupo and some friends. That's going to be happening right after this, so definitely stay tuned if you want to check out some cool Commander gameplay. Lost Caverns of Ixalan previews are continuing through the end of this week, so there's more previews to come all up through Friday. And then pre-releases start next week. So a week from Friday, you'll be able to experience the set yourself. And then next week on WeeklyMTG, it'll just be me hanging out, opening some packs of Lost Caverns of Ixalan to get a look at what the opening experience for the set is going to be like. So thank you for tuning in, and we will see you next week.
Happy Halloween.